After President Trump announces a new trade deal with Mexico, are reports of the death of the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement premature? And after a Hollywood film featuring a predominantly Asian cast breaks box office receipts in its first weekend, are we seeing a change in the way Asians are accepted in mainstream America? Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. U.S. President Trump on Monday announced a bilateral trade deal between the U.S. and Mexico that would replace NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, a trade agreement between the United States, Canada and Mexico. Trump called the new agreement, and I quote, the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, saying he wanted to do away with the NAFTA name because it had bad connotations. It's unclear if Trump intends to keep the trilateral framework in place. He said he's also open to a separate deal with Canada, adding that he would terminate the existing NAFTA agreement once there is a deal with both countries. But any changes to NAFTA would require congressional approval before taking effect, and many analysts question whether a new deal can possibly go ahead without Canada agreeing to the changes. In addition, many groups have attacked the new deal, including some longtime Trump allies. So what is likely to happen with NAFTA, and is this simply a case of Donald Trump calling victory before all the final negotiations have taken place? Joining me from Boston is Ravi Ramamurti, Distinguished Professor and Director of the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University, and from Washington, D.C., Mrs. Eleanor Clift, a columnist of the Daily Beast. Welcome to both of you. Professor Ramamurti, let me go to you first. The deal, as I said, the deal between the United States and Mexico required 75% of parts in a car traded in North America to be sourced from the United States or Mexico. That is higher than the current 62.5% of parts needed to be produced in the United States, Mexico or Canada. How big of a deal is this for the American auto industry?
For any company, American company making cars in Canada, this would not be a big deal. But of course, at this stage, Canada is still not part of the pact. And the reason I say that is because cars made in Canada purportedly already have about 71% of North American parts. But for cars made in Mexico, this could be a challenge. And the expectation is that this would require them to source more parts from the U.S. and less parts from other parts of the world. And that is, of course, part of the strategy that President Trump is pursuing, hoping to bring more manufacturing into the U.S. Now, there's one problem here, though, and that is a lot of the cars coming from Mexico to the U.S. are small cars. And the margins on these cars are not very high, and the prices cannot be raised without materially affecting demand. So it's quite possible that as a result of this agreement, manufacturers will simply decide to forego the NAFTA tariff advantage and pay a small tariff of maybe 2.5% and just continue business as usual, or maybe even move some production to other parts of the world.
Now, the Wall Street Journal editorial board has said that we are glad to see Mr. Trump step back from the suicide of NAFTA withdrawal, but on the public evidence so far, this new deal is worse. The Bloomberg editorial board has said that rebranding NAFTA is better than pulling it apart, but if this modified accord with Mexico is the best Trump can do, it would have been less disruptive and better for the U.S. economy to have left well enough alone. Mrs. Clift, what are the concerns of the people who are writing these editorials?
Well, it looks as though the deal that the president is attempting to negotiate with Mexico is really not a significant change over the deal that was in place. And in fact, when President Obama left office, as part of the Trans-Pacific trade deal, the TPP, there was elements about NAFTA that were included in that. The president could have had a similar deal, you know, the day after he walked into the Oval Office. So it's a lot of storm and fury over not much of anything. I think it's interesting the American car companies are very quiet. They seem to be happy with the way things are going. And the unions, and the president in his campaign was appealing to union leaders and union workers who felt that jobs had been lost to Mexico. They're protesting that this deal doesn't go far enough. And the president campaigned on how Mexico was going to build a wall, and there's no money for the wall, or no arrangements for a wall as part of this deal. It's very much a work in progress, and I think whether it's going to get ratified by the Congress is very much up in the air, and dependent on whether Canada comes through in these last-minute negotiations to become part of a new NAFTA.
Right, exactly. Let's talk about that aspect, the Canada factor here. Professor Ramamurti, it seems quite clear that in negotiating with Mexico, the U.S. has tried to isolate Canada in what appears to be a kind of a divide-and-conquer approach. If Canada does not come to an agreement to the deal by Friday, Mr. Trump said that he will levy additional tariffs on its auto exports. Now that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that he would try to come on board by Friday, does it mean that we'll see a new trilateral agreement anytime soon?
Well, I think the Canadians are under a lot of pressure, and I think it's really quite unusual to try to negotiate such an important deal with so many chapters and provisions in a matter of days. But I think what the Canadians are probably feeling is that if they can't put a deal together, while it's not clear that President Trump could get a U.S.-Mexico agreement through Congress, there would be a lot of uncertainty, and they'd have to live with this uncertainty for many months. And the President Trump thrives in that kind of uncertainty and sort of you know, moving things around and seeing what happens. It's too much at stake for Canada and Mexico to live with that kind of uncertainty. Because one of the realities of the situation is that both Canada and Mexico are much more dependent on the U.S. than the U.S. is on Canada or Mexico. And this asymmetry has always been a challenge for these countries. And one reason they try to work together to negotiate with the U.S. But President Trump clearly has a preference for bilateral deals over multilateral or plurilateral deals. And so he's trying, as you said, to divide and conquer. I think Canada's under a lot of pressure. But from the noises they've been making in the last day or two, it looks as if they would also like to somehow get this wrapped up, especially because, as Eleanor said, this deal is not very different from what already existed.
Okay. Mrs. Clift, how do you look at the kind of pressure that Trudeau is under, both from the United States and from, you know, ordinary mainstream Canadians? Because Trudeau on Wednesday said that the United States, Canada and Mexico could be nearing a deal to rework NAFTA, but he warned that he would walk away from discussions if he thinks the deal doesn't line up with Canadians' best interests. He said no NAFTA deal is better than a bad NAFTA deal, and now he only has about Friday to make up his mind. So what kind of dilemma is he faced with?
Well, various analysts have said that if Canada walks away from the deal, that it could cost them a full percentage point in their gross national product, and Canadians would feel the impact. President Trump clearly has the upper hand here. 3/4 of Canada's auto exports come to the United States, and the president is threatening a 25% tariff on those autos. That would really be damaging. What's unusual here is that the president plays this out so publicly, really trying to humiliate the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You know, they had some difficult words with each other at one of the recent summits, and I think the president looks at Justin Trudeau as you know, this kind of glamour boy that he kind of enjoys putting down. I think Trudeau is in an impossible situation. His foreign minister, Chrystia Freeland, who, by the way, used to be a journalist and did a number of talk shows in the United States when she lived here. She's got a lot of friends in this country. And she, you know, cut short a trip in Europe to fly in to be part of these last-minute negotiations. I mean, I think typically when you have a hard-fought deal like this it comes together at the very last moment. So I think there's a good chance that Canada will capitulate if the president can be generous enough to give them some sort of face-saving concession. President Trump is not known for that sort of thing. He just kind of loves to play you know, the bully
Well,
in these negotiations.
No surprise.
It works in the business world, doesn't work in diplomacy.
Let's take a look at the kind of obstacle this new deal, if Trudeau comes on board, could face in the U.S. Congress, right? Professor Ramamurti. Now, Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer has questioned the lack of details on the terms of this U.S.-Mexico pact. He told reporters that I'm a little worried that this one is like North Korea. They have a nice announcement, but then we don't see the details. How much do we know about what has actually been agreed? Is there enough information to move forward in a meaningful manner through Congress?
Certainly, as I said, this is quite unusual, the way these negotiations have been conducted. There hasn't been much transparency. There hasn't been much consultation with Congress, which is required as part of the Trade Promotion Authority given to the President. There hasn't been much consultation with the industry groups, as you normally find. And not many details have been provided about the scope of the agreement. And as we know, these trade deals, the devil is in the details. And those details are going to have to be hammered out before Congress will have something that it can actually vote on. Mm-hmm. And the Congress that's likely to vote on this on this bill is going to be the new Congress, very likely, not the current sitting members, and the composition of which is very much up in the air. So it's very much in keeping with Trump's style to declare victory before all the details are in, before the deal is signed, and then hope that because he has created so much sort of fanfare around the deal that somehow Congress will have to buckle and approve whatever he comes up with. I think it's a very unusual set of practices that we're seeing for such an important and complicated agreement.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Clift, Donald Trump's trade deal with Mexico could struggle to win approval from Congress if Canada comes on board, but support from Democrats would be needed, right, to pass such a deal. Given that the midterm elections are just over a couple of months away, how likely do you think that Democrats would support such a bill?
I think the outlook for this deal is, I think 50-50 would be a generous, would be giving it generous odds. The Democratic Party has traditionally been opposed to these trade agreements. President Clinton broke a lot of China within his own party, pushing through NAFTA when he did. So there's a lot of resentment about NAFTA, and new people who are likely to be elected to the House tend to be on the progressive side of the agenda and probably not going to like this trade deal, which is why the President is rushing to get it done before the midterm elections. I think that's going to be a hard challenge, but it's possible if Canada comes on board and they, you know, quickly can come to terms. The Republicans have control of the House and the Senate. They would be in a position to push it through, and the chances for the deal getting signed off on are much greater if they can get it done before the elections.
Let's wait and see. By the way, President Trump also broke a lot of China in China as well at this moment.
I know, as soon as I used that metaphor, I thought kind of an odd one to use. Thank you for completing it.
Many thanks to my two guests, Professor Ravi Ramamurti, Director of the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University, and from Washington, D.C., Eleanor Clift, a columnist for The Daily Beast. You're watching The Point with me, Li Xin. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, what's behind the popularity of a romantic comedy from Hollywood that features predominantly Asian actors and actresses, and is it likely to become a milestone in the way Asians are seen in mainstream America? Stay with me. Crazy Rich Asians, the first Hollywood film in 25 years to feature a predominantly Asian cast, has smashed box office receipts in the U.S. In the fourth year of the #OscarsSoWhite campaign, which focused attention on the lack of racial diversity in Hollywood, Crazy Rich Asians is causing a buzz amongst many Asian communities around the world. The story follows New Yorker Rachel Chu as she accompanies her longtime boyfriend Nick to his best friend's wedding in Singapore. Excited about visiting Asia for the first time, but nervous about meeting Nick's family, Rachel is ill-prepared to learn that Nick has neglected to mention a few key details about his life, such as he is filthy rich. Being Nick's girlfriend also makes her the target of Nick's disapproving mother. The movie has been a hit at the box office, grossing $84 million worldwide since its August 15th release. So why has this movie been a success? And after decades of being stereotyped as nerds or kung fu fighters, will this movie bring an opportunity for Asians to portray themselves as who they really are? I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Wong, a Chinese-American comedian, and Malik Nabee, an online personality and entrepreneur. Welcome to both of you back in the studio.
Thanks for having us.
It's always good to have you.
Yeah, great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see both of you again. So let's talk about this movie. Why do you think this movie is just an instant success, right? So many, it's unbelievable, Joe.
Yeah, first of all, I have to admit, I still haven't seen the movie yet, because I'm in China, but I just want to say...
It's not shown in China yet.
Yeah, I just want to say that I also want to be a crazy rich Asian.
You want to watch it or you want to be?
I want to be one.
You want to be one.
So far, I reached the crazy part, but not the rich part
yet. Not the rich part.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about what this movie has managed that the previous movies hasn't. Or have there been any similar movies like this in recent history, Joe?
As far as I remember, there was one movie called The Joy Luck Club. I saw the movie when I was in America back in the 90s. Honestly, as a man, I didn't quite like that movie, mainly because I guess I'm a comedian in nature. But that movie is just too sad. It's like one sad story repeated 4 times. So that's the movie. And also, a lot of Asian men in America had problem with that movie because in that movie, all the Asian men were portrayed as this really chauvinistic, mistreating their wives, beating their wives, or having a lot.
But you don't have a problem with the rich Asian men.
Oh no.
Malik, what is your answer? What is your take on the success of this movie?
Well, I think it's definitely a big box office hit, and obviously all Asian cast is definitely an attraction. But at the same time, the story itself, regardless of the race, it's just a good story. A normal girl fell in love with a rich guy who doesn't want to watch it, right? But at the same time,
what's good about it? I mean, it's actually a little bit cliche.
I want to fall in love with a rich guy too.
No, I mean, some people say this is basically a very traditional storyline, right, for Chinese.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why some people are saying such a storyline, such a movie could actually reinforce the stereotype of the Chinese, that the parents don't look at the girl's personality, but rather her family background to decide whether or not she's... what do you think of that?
Well, I think some part of it is true, but at the same time, you have to look at it from different angles. I mean, first of all, as an Asian male, I'm really proud that finally, I think it's probably the first time in the Hollywood history that, an Asian leading actor are portrayed as a very sexy, attractive, and successful man, and not only attractive to the Asian ladies, but all ladies in general. So I think that's a great success because the Asian female actors, I mean, there are a few that have already made great success in Hollywood, but there weren't many Asian actors. So I think that's what I'm.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Because, believe it or not, Asian male are ranked bottom 10% on Tinder, which is a dating APP in
What's
America.
the problem with Asian male?
I approve of this message. as a user of Tinder.
So with this movie, I just feel that the 3 of us can make a movie.
No, but really, does it have to do with the stereotype or misunderstanding about Asian males, those who are living in America, that they are too nerdy or they're too simple, or what is it?
I think it's a combination of all of the above, right? They're too nerdy. They're not brave or manly enough. They're not great at sports. So I guess it's a combination of a lot of things, or music,
And also the media and the movie reinforce the idea that Asian men aren't really sexy.
You mean normally?
Yeah. And especially if we know who is the most popular Asian actor, maybe King John, who was kind of a funny guy bumping around. And back in the day, the most famous Asian actor was Fu Manchu, a bad guy. So yeah, that was way back. So, but I think the movie can make a big difference, though.
But Joe, you lived in the United States. You're also in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
Why is it difficult? Why has there been so few charismatic Asian male figures in the entertainment industry? Is it difficult for them to make it, or they don't like it? There is no market. What is it?
Yeah, first of all, I have to take a lot of responsibilities for that.
Why?
I'm not charismatic, you know, that's the problem.
No, it's different. It's a different charism.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's very hard to say. I guess a lot of Asian American men, they tend to be more reserved. They're quieter.
Sure.
And what really drove me nuts was once I read on Boston Globe talking about this problem. You know, Asian male is having a hard time in the workplace, including acting. That's because their conclusion is because Asian males are quieter than white males. So they should seek opportunities in Southeast Asia.
Is it?
I'm like, how can you say this? You know, these people were born in this country.
What
They're
does
Americans.
that reflect? What does that? But first of all, is there an element of truth in there? And secondly, if so, what does that reflect of the lack of understanding, maybe interaction between?
That was the conclusion I drew for a long time. Is one big part of being Asian American is not being considered as Americans. So that is why they can always say, oh, these people, they should go to other places instead of America. But they are Americans, so it's very unfair. I think Asian females are having a hard time too, but they're slightly doing better than Asian males because, you know, let's face it, America is like a white male-dominant society. At least Asian female are appreciated to a certain extent by the white male. But white, like Asian males are a little bit harder to be appreciated.
Competitive as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Malik, how do you think this movie is going to change or is going to help? Do you think it's going to help Asian, let's say Asian Americans in general, portray themselves in a more truthful manner or help them integrate with the mainstream society? Do you see it that way?
I think it's a good start. I mean, I've seen some criticism about, you know, showing like Asians are just rich or, you know, like no-brainers type of rich, but I think this is a great start. First of all, as I said, male actors that are portrayed as a very sexy figure, but at the same time, it showed the Americans how Asia is developing. Like, so these Asian people, they're from a very developed society. And in the future, maybe we'll have a superhero movie, and we can take more roles than only romantic comedies. Maybe, because the superhero movie is the core of the Hollywood movie. And
right now,
well, we already have, right, on the mainland, Wu Jing,
the Wolf Warrior.
Yeah, the Wolf Warrior. I mean, he was beating up a male, a white male.
You need to beat up some aliens to be considered as.
But before that, there's Jackie Chan. You know, he's doing great.
But it has not seemed to have changed the stereotype, the impression.
No, because the stereotype has always been that Asians know kung fu. This was Lee, you know.
So the more you know kung fu.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, Crazy Asians is a novel written in 2013 by Kevin Kwan, and he said that his intention in writing the novel was to introduce a contemporary Asia to North American audience. What does he mean? I mean, does the Asia that North American audience know belong to the 1920th century?
Exactly, because I have a Thai co-worker. Her mother-in-law keeps asking her. She's from Thailand. She always asks, how are things in the jungle? She's from Bangkok.
Is that
it's a
joke?
major city. And it's not a joke. They seriously are concerned about their life in the woods. You know, even though. Yeah.
I have a similar experience. I actually brought my American roommates back to Beijing, and he stayed here for about a month. He said he completely changed his idea about Asia. And back in the day, he was thinking maybe like a jungle type, or people with, you know, motorcycle driving around, and like there was no cars, like village. But, you know, he saw better restaurant than he, you know, better American food than he had in, you know, back in New Jersey. So he was quite surprised, and I think the book and the movie did show that, you know, very developed Asia and very civilized Asia to the American audience.
Very sophisticated Asians as well.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot, because idea of Asia is always a third world country. You know, even sometimes when I visit an American family, the mother always say to their kids, "You should finish your meal." Kids in third world countries are starving, and the kids gonna look at me.
It must be a real shock then for people in North America or basically in other parts of the world to see swarms of rich Chinese coming and shopping and buying up a whole shop and has the movie come at the right time, maybe also?
Well, I think I'm a bit concerned though, because from my own personal experience in college, there were some really rich Asian kids, Chinese kids, and they were buying luxury cars, and it gave a lot of American students an impression that all the kids from China are rich. And a friend of mine who's also Asian, he drove a very old Honda, and then he was laughed at by Americans. Say, "Oh, you're the poor Asian. You're the one of the few poor Asians." So I'm afraid that movie gonna reinforce this and showing that so from one extreme to another. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, Joe, are you going to write some jokes about that?
Well, I fully agree with this point. I just remember some white Americans complain, "Oh, look at the housing price in that town has gone up significantly because of all of these Asian buyers." But statistically, Asian buyers is only like 5 or 10% of the total buyers. But Asians look different from other buyers.
A lot of misconceptions, misunderstanding, and really I think people need to understand that crazy rich Asians maybe only account for 1% or even less of all the Asians, right? The great majority of Asians are not like that.
Oh, exactly.
But let's do it one thing at a time, right?
Now it's great to have some Asian faces on the big screen.
Okay, we start. Let's take it from there. Okay, many thanks to my two guests, Joe Wong, a Chinese-American comedian, and Malik Nabee, an online personality and entrepreneur. Many thanks for coming to the studio today. And that is it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got the point. Not all Asians are rich.